Again, welcome to ITSE 2309. This will be dealing with Chapter 9. I'd like to go back and kind of reference something we talked about earlier, that architect scenario that we spoke with earlier. I want to use that because that helps kind of understand the process of Chapter 9. When you're looking to an architect, he's going to wind up with a set of plans, and those plans will be handed off to a contractor that's going to do the work. Well, there's a parallel process in databases that we're going to look at, and that is called the database or the systems development lifecycle, and then you have the database lifecycle. Now, within the systems development lifecycle, there are several elements that we have to look at. You have to plan the item, that's one, and then you have an analysis, and then you have the design of the item, and then you have to implement the item. And after you implement the item, you have to maintain the item. Okay? So these are the steps we're going to look at, which kind of parallel the process in the architect, where the architect would plan, he would analyze, he would design. Now the analyze would be interesting, like, if you're going to build a one-story house, the amount of concrete you need for the foundation would be, let's say, 18 inches. If you can build a two-story house, well, there's going to be more weight on the foundation. So that means maybe you need 24 inches of concrete to support the additional weight. So that kind of analysis is what we're talking about here. So as you're building something, yes, you understand you're going to have a foundation, but depending on what it's going to support, you may need more beneath it. Okay, the design. Okay, well, we know all kitchens have countertops. So the question is, are you going to use a cheap Formica or heavy granite? It's something that you and your customer client, you have to decide on how much money you're going to spend on these items. The implementation. This is where once you get it up and running, you're going to get it to work. And then once you get it to work, you have to maintain it. Now, the maintenance issue is kind of interesting because any organization has employee turnover. So if you have employee turnover, how are you going to retrain the new employees? So that's part of the process. So this is the overall process. Now, as with as with an architect, once you have a set of plans, you hand it over to a contractor or an engineer that's going to build it. He has his own set of worries to do. And that is called the database lifecycle. Now, that also has some parallels to the the system's life cycle. You have to study it. Now, in the study, let me give you an example of that. So, you hire a contractor. He goes out and he's going to survey the land to make sure that everything's going to work. Now, what the contractor will do, they'll do core samples. They'll dig to see whether the ground will support the structure that they're going to build. So they're going to study to see if it's actually a doable item. And that's part of the study that happens. Now, once again, there's also a design that happens. Now, the design is, you have to kind of fine-tune the process to the condition you have. And in the previous example, we had cited that slope scenario. So, here's the design, the plan, but, it's one thing to see it, it's another thing to make it work. So there is some accommodations that have to happen in the design of this process. And then you have the implementation. And then you have the testing. Now the testing is very simple. When you buy a house, you want to make sure the plumbing don't leak, right? So what they do is they pressure test all the plumbing, make sure there's no leaks. Now, understanding that water rolls downhill, you have to make sure that the wastewater goes downhill. So there's a lot of testing that happens to make sure everything's working. And then you have the operations. Now the operations scenario is kind of interesting. So you buy a brand new house. It has a dishwasher, it has a washing machine, it has a refrigerator. Those come with warranties type thing. So in this process, one of the things you have to look at, so you're going to buy the hardware, you're going to buy the software, you're going to buy the printer, you're going to buy the network. All those items are going to be new, and they're going to have their own items that have to be dealt with as far as the maintenance and operation. And then once again, you have the maintenance. So, you talk about, the nerd squad or the geek squad, they're going to take care of the process. So once you have this thing up and running, You know, who are you gonna call if you have a problem? Now, all this is separate and apart, because this is the actual building of the process, and this is the actual development of the process. So this is the development life cycle, and this is the actual building of the life cycle, and that's what we're gonna talk to you about in this chapter.